Well, hi tubers and tubettes, welcome back to the channel. Nice to see you again. I've been gone for 3 or 4 days. The reason why is I just haven't had anything to talk about. A shout out to all the new subscribers the last 3 or 4 days where I've been absent without leave here in the compound during the quarantine. Anyway, welcome aboard. Thanks. I think 200 or 300 people jumped on. And but the topic I think will be on this video is really an unoriginal saying, but it just seems apropos. It's called less is more. And like I said, the last 3 or 4 days have been pretty uneventful. Our town's kind of opened up a little bit. May and I were able to get out and buzz around. We actually went down and bought a new helmet for me because mine was not fitting anymore for the scooter. It kept flipping around. So we did that, and we received a couple of new microphones for the for our channels, and I still got them in the box. For some reason, it's been so long since I've bought anything kind of nice for myself that I just don't even want to unpack it yet. So I'm still using this one. But they should be cool. I mean, one of them's got this big old feather looking thing on it, so I think it cuts down the wind noise. And we should be able to do some exterior stuff, especially May. And I got another set of dual microphones like this. So if I have a guest, I can have a microphone, and my guest can have a microphone. And my buddy told me which ones to order, so I ordered them through Shopee, and they came the other day. And they were more expensive, but they were certainly, I think, worth the money, because the cheap ones that I bought before, they just crashed and burned after about a week or two. So, and they weren't very effective. So that's the big update on my spending habits. No, but really, the last 3 or 4 days, we were able to get out. There's a couple of restaurants that have lightened up and are letting you eat inside. So we met up with some friends, and we took a ride out to an Okai store, which is where they sell pre-loved clothing. And May went and bought some clothes, and another couple went with us, and his girl got some clothes. And then we went to lunch, and we got to go inside of a restaurant and sit down and have lunch. And then we were able to drive down to the boulevard, and we bought a coffee. We were not allowed to sit inside the restaurant, but they did let us have some chairs outside. So it was like one of those normal fun days where you go and you piss away money that you don't really need to. Going right back into that habit. No, but it was nice. It was a nice break. You know, I got to go and chit-chat and get out, and there was not much traffic or much going on, but it was just a nice change of view. And speaking of change of views, I don't know if I told you guys this or not, but I did find a new apartment. And July 1, we will be moving into it. This is, I think, the 5th or 6th of June, something like that. So in about 3 weeks, we'll be out of here. And the good news on that is there'll be a different point of view for you and for me. Because the way the apartment's set up, I should be able to do these little recordings from my patio, which has a nice overview. And then there's a lot more angles, if you will, in the apartment itself to set up different stuff so that you're not always looking at that picture and that chicken and this couch. So that'll be a nice change of pace for me and a nice change of pace for you. And with the new microphones, these things I think have noise cancellation for wind and stuff like that. That's what they're built for. So I should be able to do some exterior stuff. I'm not going to do a lot of walk and talk, but I would like to go to some locations and talk to people, like at the beach or, you know, at a restaurant, stuff like that. I've done it before, and it's always been fun, but it's always been goofy audio. So hopefully that problem's been solved. And now it's time for May to get on board with that too. She's resistant to use that stuff though. So anyway, Let her go at her own pace. Less is more. Let's get into the topic. I was watching, this is what sparked this whole video, is I was being a lazy slob as usual last night, and I clicked on Netflix. I hadn't checked out Netflix for a couple, 3 days. And a new video came up about Jeffrey Epstein, or Epstein, however you say it. And that's the billionaire guy that got killed or killed himself in jail. He's the guy that was having all the underage girls come over, and he was, having his way with them, and he associated himself with a bunch of rich and powerful people, and he's the one that was hanging in his jail cell, just in case you don't know who that is. And so I turned it on because it was new, and I didn't think I would really learn too much from it because I already knew the story. I'd already seen the news reports. I had already read some articles about him, and he just struck me as this, billionaire guy that had a thing for young girls and used his power and his influence improperly to take advantage of them and, just wreck about 300 or 400 lives along the way. So I really wasn't that interested in hearing his story, but out of boredom, I put it on. And I'd like to tell you how the whole thing ended, but to be perfectly candid with you, I fell asleep about halfway through the whole show. So I never finished watching it. And so you're saying, well, what the hell has this got to do with less is more? I'm getting around to it. Hang in there. What struck me wasn't the fact that this billionaire guy, this mysterious billionaire guy that did all these kinky things and had some weird sex pervert mind badoogle going on. That wasn't the thing that struck me. What struck me was this guy had billions of dollars, and he had all these big ass houses, mansions, more like it. He owned his own island. He had a place in, now I can't remember where, but somewhere in New York he had like the top of the top, and somewhere in Florida he was at the top of the food chain there, super exclusive. I think he had a place in New Mexico or the middle of nowhere, but it was this big expansive thing. You get the drill. He had 4, 5, 6, 7 mansions. He had 2 private jets. He did this, he did that. He had all this, he had all that. And what struck me was a couple of things while I watched it. The story itself about him taking advantage of these young girls was sickening at best. And so that's probably why I fell asleep, because I just wasn't interested in hearing the rest of it. I already knew. But it joggled my mind that about the 5 or 6 houses. And I know I'm not the only, I only speak for myself. I never give advice if possible. Sometimes I screw up and I end up doing it by mistake. But if you're like me, when I lived in the States, I used to have this fantasy about winning the lottery. And the lottery was just like, it was always on my mind, not always on my mind, but it was on my mind a lot whenever it got really stupid high. Because it would start off at, I don't know how many million, $6 million or something like that. And then it would get up to almost $1 billion, and then all points in between. And so there would be this stampede, to buy lottery tickets, the more and more the money got. And people would talk about it, and I couldn't help but fantasize how great it would be to have all that money. And I found out too by talking with coworkers and friends, and we would kick in $5 or $10. We'd do the office pool about, and so would go down to the state line border, Nevada, California, and buy the lottery tickets and blah, blah, blah. We never won, obviously. But I found out that my dispersion, the way I would disperse of the funds was not original at all. we all pretty much said the same thing. Well, what if you became all of a sudden after taxes and you won the big thing, and at the end of the day you took the lump sum and it was $400 million that you had. And a guy my age, I mean, it's different if you're 20 years old and you got 400 million, but as opposed to being 65 years old and having 400 million. There's a little different priorities set up here. But we were all pretty much the same. We were like saying, oh, well, I would give my dad or my mom or my spouses, everybody in my family that I love, I would buy them all a house and a car, or I would give them all $1 million or $5 million. And I would make sure my children were all set up and their tuition and their college, and they would have a house and they would have a car and they would do BBB. And that was the way my thinking was too. Oh yeah, if I got won that, first thing I would do is blah, 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 blah. And then I would, of course, do something big and noble, like, help the poor and give $5 million to the starving kids of you name the country. And that's what everybody kept saying. But my fantasy expanded out to where I wouldn't buy one big ass house like everybody else is talking about. Something like Kobe Bryant would own, or Madonna lives in England. I wouldn't want that. I would buy 5 or 6 or 7 houses all over the world. That was my thing. I was thinking, I could spend 3 months in Switzerland, and then I could spend 3 months in Italy, and then I could spend 3 months out fishing in Canada, and then I'd come back to the States and check in on everybody and show them what a big shot I am, and then I'd be off to Asia, and I'd be doing this, I'd be doing all this and that, And so that got jolted in my head when I saw this Jeffrey Epstein thing, and he had all these mansions all over the place. And I thought, wow, what a difference 3 years makes. I mean, I have my Social Security check that comes in that covers my bills. And I have a little nest egg set aside for emergencies. And recently, because of the quarantine, of course, yesterday was the exception. May and I went out and did our little coffee thing. But during the quarantine, May and I have been able to set aside a couple, $300 a month, because we haven't been going out and doing things. Hence, we bought the, the new microphones for $40. And then the rest kind of went into my little security blanket account. And that's kind of that. And so I'm set up to a point where now I think I've learned that I can dial things down even more. I got a lesson out of the quarantine on how each month I can probably save $100 or $200 a month by cutting out some stuff that I thought was important but isn't important. And therefore I can increase my security blanket a little bit. And I think money's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful instrument. It's all based on faith. It's actually worth nothing in and of itself. But if I have $5 in my pocket and you have an item that is worth $5 and you want my $5 and I want this item, we just trade, everybody wins, and it's a simple transaction. So for me, having X amount of dollars in the bank, we'll use the number $1 million, because that's always a popular number. If I had $1 million in the bank, I think it would just sit there. I have absolutely no inclination to go out and spend it. I would just take respite in the fact that it's sitting there, so that if I ever needed it and something came up, or a family member was in trouble, or something to that effect, then that would be available. And I would probably just make a will and give it off to baby May when I go to the happy hunting ground, and that would be that. I've been brutally awakened in the last few days by how important not coveting and owning stuff is, and how happy I am that I've been able to actually stick to my guns and not acquire a bunch of stuff. Even though there's been a few extra dollars coming in, put it in the savings account, forgot about it. I gave May her YouTube money. She put it in her savings account. She never forgets about it. She's very proud of it. But at the end of the day, I don't own anything here in the apartment that I can't walk away from other than my laptop, my phone, and some clothes. The only purchases I've made is my scooter and this couch, and they're both used up. They're both not worth near what I paid for them. If there was a typhoon tomorrow or an earthquake or a coup and I had to bail out and go somewhere else, I could pack the proverbial suitcase. I could stuff the backpack with my computer and my phone and some clothes and, you know, my passport and my cash and my information, and go to Vietnam or go home or go here or go there. But I've watched a guy recently who's a friend of mine go through a transition of moving, and he has the opposite viewpoint of me. He came over and got an unfurnished apartment and bought a bunch of stuff. Bought a TV, bought a bed, bought a this, bought a that, bought a couch, bibbidi bop, bibbidi boop. He's decided to move and has run against all kinds of obstacles in making that happen. And he's totally stressed out and is trying to get just his stuff from point A to point B. And it's not simple like it is in America, because the people that were supposed to come and pick up the stuff today didn't come, and the people that are supposed to move into his place are ready to move in tomorrow, so he's got to be out. And you know the drill. The place he's moving into, they're not responding. It's the Philippines, man. All right? So I'm hopefully not speaking out of turn here. I'm not using any names. This is just an observation of a guy that I know and care for, and his back's against the wall. And the only reason that I can see that his back is against the wall right now, through no fault of his own, he's done everything by the letter of the law, given the right notice, paid the right deposits, made the money, made the appointments, got it all lined up, all packed, and then everybody flaked on him. And the reason that he's stressed out and the reason that he's having hassles is because he's burdened down with a bunch of stuff. And I think at this point it's got to, you don't really even care about the stuff anymore. You know, it's starting to bite him in the ass. I know another guy, I know a number of guys that have built homes out here, and more power to them. I mean, me, I would never build a house out here. I would never buy a house. I would never buy a condo. I know that it's May's dream to own some land and to build a simple home, and I'm all for it. That's what every nickel that goes into her savings account she's got dedicated. That's for her to one day purchase a piece of property and build her own little simple home. Let's face it, folks, you've got to live somewhere, right? She doesn't see any value, and I understand it, as a local, as a Filipina that can own land and doesn't mind living a more native lifestyle as to a spoiled prick like me who has to have his aircon. It makes total sense for her to own a little piece of land and a little house on it and something that she can have for her future so that she's never homeless. That's huge. I'm all for that. But after watching this movie, I thought, you know what? I have absolutely no desire anymore to go anywhere like Italy for 3 months and Switzerland for 3 months. And it's just gone. That whole notion that seems so romantic to me just doesn't float my boat anymore. I've found serenity. I have found my bliss. I know for a fact that Dumageddon gets on my nerves. When I say Dumageddon, I mean the Philippines. This goes wrong, that goes wrong, wah, 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 wah. And I have freedom because once a year, the COVID thing has put a nix in all this year, but moving forward, every 6 months, every year, I just find one of those super duper cheap flight things and bug out to a neighboring country like Thailand or Cambodia or Vietnam. The list goes on and on. And I can just go there and hang out, get an Airbnb really cheap. Again, take the proverbial backpack and a suitcase. Still maintain my residence here, just take a vacation. And get a change of view, get a change of food, get a new outlook, if you will. Get kind of rebooted, get kind of out of the ordinary, get out of the comfort zone for a while, and then come right back here. I don't need 3 months in Switzerland. I need a week in Phuket. You know? And if the mail service ever starts working here, and all that, baby May will be right there with me. And we'll go together, and I'll have joy in seeing her seeing that. She's actually really excited about just jumping from little islands that are here in the Philippines. Like, I think it's Palawan. It's supposed to be some sort of like nice place. It's maybe a little pricey, but that'd be a fun little 3-day getaway. And I'm totally cool with that. Again, I don't need to go to some big Ritz-Carlton thing to be surrounded by a bunch of opulent crap and look at the same TV show that I can see from here. Because that's at the end of the day what you end up doing. At least what I would end up doing. I don't enjoy big fancy meals that cost $300 and $400 enough to justify that. Since I've been here, I've seen what the power of $200 or $300 can do to literally change someone's life. I mean, you can give not you, but I could give $200 or $300 that I would toss away on some silly surf and turf thing over at the whatever club at the top of whatever building. And to be quite frank with you, I'd get much more enjoyment in cooking food for someone that is really truly hungry and really needs that. Getting back to the guys that have bought the houses, I think they did a very noble thing. I think they've done something awesome because they have their baby Mays in their lives, and that's their legacy that they're able to leave them because they're financially better off than I am. So they can afford to build the house or buy the house, and they know that their wife is going to be around a lot longer than they are, and they're in love, and it's a solid marriage. It's not the fly-by-night thing that you hear about where the boy meets girl and 2 months later they get married and 3 months later he buys her a house and then 5 months later he's kicked out. It's not those guys. Those guys are here. We've talked about them in the past too. But these are guys that I know. They're rock solid guys. But I also know that even after all the due diligence that they've done and all the hard work, there's a couple of guys that have done everything they could to make it right. And what do you know? 3 months after they move in, 90 days of perfection, someone moves in across the street and they've got 15 dogs that bark all day and all night. And there's just no control over that. And so now this thing, this stuff that had so much value is now being somewhat diminished, if not ruined at some point in time, by noise or neighbors, or a drunk moves in, or some guy with a motorbike that took the muffler off. They do that around here, and he's squealing around at 3 o'clock in the morning. Or there's just stuff that you can't control. And in my mind, those guys, while they've done something noble, I'm not saying they should change it. I'm just saying I think they've lost a little bit of freedom, unless they're so well off that they can afford to just walk away from it or sell it for a song and start all over again. I don't know. I guess if you've got $50 million and you spend $200,000 for a house and it doesn't work out, you can walk away from it. But I don't think I'm going to win the lottery. All right, guys. I'll see you next time.